After a serious accident, I was in the hospital and I called my parents to take care of my children. They said coldly, "We thought you had died, so we sold your house and put your children in an orphan's home." I was heartbroken. But when I came back, I gave a lot of laughter, because the house they sold was actually. The moment I opened my eyes in that cold, sterile hospital room, I couldn't feel my legs, my hands trembled, and my voice barely came out in a whisper. Tubes and wires clung to my body like chains, but all I could think of was my two little children. My mind raced through every scenario. Who picked them up from school? Were they scared? Had someone fed them? With all the strength I could gather, I asked the nurse to hand me a phone. It took 3 tries to dial the number, my mother's number. I remembered it like muscle memory. As the phone rang, my heart beat faster than the monitors next to me. When she finally answered, I expected concern, a scream of relief, something. But her voice was cold, clipped, and completely emotionless. "Oh, it's you," she said. I paused. "Mom, I need you to go get the kids. I had an accident." Her next words hit harder than the accident itself. "We thought you had died, so we sold your house and placed the kids in a state orphan home. It's been weeks. What else were we supposed to do?" The world went silent. The beeping machines around me faded. I didn't cry. I couldn't even breathe. My body may have been battered from the crash, but in that moment, my soul was the thing that shattered. "You did what?" I whispered. "You weren't waking up. We couldn't manage 2 kids. And the house? We thought it was worthless sitting empty." Worthless. That's what they thought of my life. My children. My home. They saw me as a dead woman before the doctors did. I hung up the phone without another word. My hand dropped. My breath hitched. My eyes stared at the ceiling tiles above me, but all I could see was the face of my daughter crying and my son wondering why no one came for him. That's when something deep inside me cracked, not from pain, but from rage. And in that moment, I made myself a promise. I might be broken now, but when I get back on my feet, they'll regret every decision they made while thinking I was gone. Back when I was growing up, I always knew my parents had favorites, and I wasn't one of them. My younger sister, Lacey, was the golden child. Everything she did was praised. Every mistake was forgiven. Me? I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The single mom who worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet after my husband passed. I didn't expect gifts or praise, I just wanted support. A little kindness. A little love. But that call from the hospital confirmed what I had suspected all along. They never saw me as their daughter. Just someone they tolerated. As I lay there recovering, memory after memory hit me like waves on a broken dock. I remembered last Christmas when I invited them over, hoping we could finally reconnect. They canceled last minute because Lacey was throwing a party, and it's more fun with her friends. I remembered the time my son was in the hospital with a fever, and I begged them to come stay with my daughter for a few hours. They said they were busy watching a game. Always too busy, until it came to Lacey's kids. But nothing compared to what they did now. I had spent years building that little home, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. Every corner held memories of bedtime stories, burnt pancakes, and birthday balloons. That house wasn't just property, it was our life. And without a second thought, they'd sold it. Cashed it out like it was a forgotten storage unit. And my children. My babies. They didn't even bother to call my closest friend. They didn't reach out to a neighbor or a church. No, they dropped them into the state system like they were lost luggage. The doctors said I had survived a miracle. That I was unconscious for over 3 weeks, and no one expected me to wake up. But not once during that time did my parents sit by my bed. Not once did they ask the nurses for updates. When the social worker came by to speak with them about temporary guardianship for my kids, they flat out refused. Told them, "We've raised our kids. We're too old for this." Too old for love? Too old for responsibility? As I sat in that hospital bed, I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt abandoned. Discarded. Like I was nothing more than a burden to them. And that kind of pain? It doesn't heal with time. But pain has a funny way of shaping you. Day by day, I started forcing my body to move. Physical therapy sessions became my battleground. Every stretch, every step was fueled by one thing: getting my kids back, and making sure the people who threw them away would never forget what they did. They thought I was dead. But I was alive. And now, I was coming back, with fire in my soul and a storm in my heart. The first time I held my son, I was 22. My husband and I didn't have much, just a tiny apartment, second-hand furniture, and dreams too big for our pockets, but the moment I looked into my baby's eyes, I felt like the richest woman in the world. 2 years later, we had our daughter, and our little family felt whole. But then came the storm I never saw coming. My husband was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. He was gone within 8 months. No insurance. No savings. Just me, 2 toddlers, and a mountain of grief. I begged my parents for help. Not money, just time. A weekend with the kids so I could work a double shift. A few groceries when the fridge was empty. But they always had an excuse. We're too tired. Lacey needs us this weekend. You decided to be a mother. Now act like one. Still, I never held it against them, not really. I just told myself they didn't know how to show love. I convinced myself they'd come around one day. That maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud of how I kept going. How I raised 2 kind, strong, beautiful children all by myself. But I was wrong. I remembered the night before the accident clearly. My daughter had just lost her first tooth, and we were laughing because she'd written a note to the tooth fairy asking for a chocolate bar instead of $1. My son had fallen asleep on the couch with his book still open, his little glasses sliding down his nose. I'd kiss their foreheads and tuck them in, whispering, "No matter what happens, Mommy's got you." And then I didn't come back home. That night on the road, I swerved to save a dog. My car flipped twice. The paramedics had to cut me out. And for 3 weeks, while I lay in that hospital fighting for life, my children cried themselves to sleep in a state-run group home with strangers. The idea of it nearly broke me. I had always promised to protect them. But I wasn't there when they needed me the most. I could only imagine the questions they must have asked. Why didn't Grandma come? Where's Mommy? Are we being punished? And my parents? The people who were supposed to be family? They didn't even try. They signed paperwork, handed over keys, and went back to their comfortable lives like we were never part of them. I cried silently during therapy. Not because my bones ached or because the exercises hurt. I cried because I had failed my kids. Because I had trusted the wrong people with their hearts. But that pain also lit something inside me. Every scar on my body, every bruise, every limp, I started to wear them like armor. Because I was not going to let this end like some tragic story. They sold my house? Fine. Let them think they won. Let them smile in their fake peace. Because what they didn't know was, the house wasn't even mine to lose. And soon, when I showed up at their doorstep, not just walking but rising, they'd understand just how wrong they were to count me out. They thought they'd buried me. But I was planting the roots for a comeback they'd never forget. After weeks of physical therapy and mental healing, I finally stood on my feet again, still shaky, but stronger than ever in spirit. The doctors called it a miracle. I called it purpose. The social worker, Ms. Danielle, had tears in her eyes when I told her I was ready to fight for my children. She'd seen too many parents give up. But not me. I asked where they were, she gave me the name of the group home. I thanked her, but I didn't go there right away. First, I needed to know everything that had happened. I went home, or what was once home. But when I reached my old street, my heart dropped. There was a new car in the driveway. Fresh landscaping. New curtains. Strangers laughed on the porch, sipping iced tea like they'd always belonged there. My house was gone. I didn't even get to say goodbye. But here's the thing, they had no idea the woman watching from across the street wasn't broken anymore. She was becoming unstoppable. I called the county clerk's office and pulled the sale records. The house had been sold just 2 weeks after my accident, to a private cash buyer. And guess who signed off on the sale? My parents. As if they had any right. But then came the twist even I hadn't expected. While reviewing the documents, something odd popped up. The deed wasn't in my name. It was in the name of Tucker Family Trust. A trust my husband had quietly set up before he passed, naming me and the kids as the only legal beneficiaries. He must have done it after his diagnosis, trying to protect us without saying goodbye. Which meant, my parents had sold a house they didn't legally own. I stared at the papers, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with fire. They forged my signature. That was felony fraud. And that meant I had more than just pain now. I had leverage. But I didn't call the police, not yet. See, I wanted them to think they were safe. I wanted them to sit in their new living room, sipping coffee with fake peace in their hearts, while I worked in silence. I met with a lawyer. A good one. I showed him everything, my accident reports, the forged deed, the trust paperwork, the timeline. His jaw clenched when he saw the signatures. "You've got a case," he said, his voice firm. "A strong one." But I wasn't just after the house. I was after the message. You don't throw family away like trash. You don't give up on children. And you sure don't mess with a mother who came back from the dead. So I filed for full custody of my children. That was the easy part, no judge in their right mind would leave kids in the system when their mother had returned, alive and standing. Then I took the next step. I had my lawyer send a quiet little letter to my parents, a formal notice of civil and criminal charges pending for property fraud, unless we resolved the matter face to face. No shouting. No warning. Just cold, professional paperwork. The kind that makes a guilty person sweat bullets at the mailbox. They didn't know I was alive. Now they'd realize I wasn't just alive, I was back. And the storm was only just beginning. The day I walked into their front yard, they didn't recognize me at first. My body had healed, but my presence, my posture, my silence, was what stopped them in their tracks. My mother was watering her tulips, humming like life had been nothing but pleasant. My father sat in his lawn chair, reading the paper, the same smug look on his face that he wore the day he told me, "You're on your own, Rachel. We raised you, but we're not here to babysit your mistakes." When my mother looked up and saw me, the watering can dropped. Water splashed at her feet, soaking the soil. Her mouth opened but no words came out. I walked up slowly, like the calm before a storm. Well, I said. "Didn't expect to see me, did you?" My father stood up fast, his chair falling backward. "Rachel?" His voice shook. You're alive?" I smiled. "Yes. Very much so." "Surprised?" They stood frozen, as if they were looking at a ghost. But I wasn't a ghost, I was Judgment Day in jeans and boots. I handed them a folder. Inside it were the documents, the forged deed, the trust paperwork, and a letter from my attorney. My father flipped through them with trembling hands. "I believe this makes it clear," I said. "You sold a property you had no legal right to touch. That's called fraud. And I could press charges." My mother tried to recover. "Rachel, sweetheart, we thought. You thought I was dead?" I snapped. "So you sold everything I had and dumped your grandchildren into an orphanage without even checking? Without even calling the hospital?" It was a hard time, my father stuttered. "We panicked. We didn't know what to do." "You knew how to forge my name, though," I said. "Funny how you found the strength for that." They were quiet. Guilt crept across their faces like shadows at sunset. Then I delivered the final blow. You have 48 hours to vacate that house, I said. My lawyer has already filed to reclaim it. I'm not asking for your apology. I'm taking back what's mine. My mother's face turned pale. But we used the money, we bought furniture, upgraded the appliances, we've put our lives here. I'm sure the state prison will let you decorate your cell, I said flatly. My father tried to puff up his chest, like he still had some power left. You wouldn't actually go to the police. You're not that kind of daughter. I looked him dead in the eyes. I wasn't, I said. But I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm the woman you betrayed. The mother you abandoned. The fighter you didn't see coming. And then, for the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Not anger. Not control. Fear. And it felt like justice. I turned and walked away as they stood there, helpless in the home they had stolen. For the first time, they had to live in the consequences of their actions. That night, I sat on the couch in the small rental I was staying in, holding my kids close. I told them, we're going home soon. My son looked up and asked, to our old house? I smiled. No, sweetheart. To our house. The one your father protected. The one I fought for. The one that's rightfully ours. And as they hugged me tighter, I knew that revenge wasn't just sweet. It was righteous. Exactly 48 hours later, I stood at the gate of the house they once called theirs, my children by my side, both holding small backpacks. My lawyer was already there, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp, voice calm as ever. A moving truck idled nearby. The front door opened slowly. My parents stepped out, looking exhausted, aged, and smaller. They didn't make eye contact. They didn't argue. My father held a suitcase in each hand while my mother shuffled behind, a wrinkled handbag hanging loosely from her shoulder. They walked past us in silence. My kids watched quietly. They didn't recognize the couple who had abandoned them, not truly. And maybe that was for the best. Once the last box was cleared, my lawyer handed me the keys. It's yours, officially and legally. Welcome home, Rachel. I stepped into the house. It looked different, of course. They had redecorated, changed furniture, added curtains and wallpapers. But the bones were the same. This was the house where I'd rocked my daughter to sleep, where my son had taken his first steps. The walls remembered us. Can we go to our rooms? My daughter asked. Of course, I smiled. They ran upstairs with laughter that sounded like music. That sound, it stitched a torn piece of my soul back together. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cupboards, and smiled. Everything would be okay now. We weren't rich, we weren't powerful, but we had something better. We had each other. Over the next few weeks, I repainted the walls with my kids. We baked cookies together, even if we burned a few. We planted flowers in the front yard, the way I always dreamed. Life was simple, but it was real. And it was ours. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold, I sat on the porch sipping iced tea. My kids were drawing chalk shapes on the driveway. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly lady with soft curls and a kind smile, walked over. You're back, she said warmly. I was hoping you'd come home. I nodded. It's been a journey. I heard what happened, she said gently. You're stronger than most, Rachel. They may have taken your house, but you never lost your spirit. That made me pause. Because she was right. All this time, I thought I'd lost everything. But sitting here, watching my children smile, feeling the breeze on my face, knowing justice had been served, I realized I had something they never did. Peace. And that night, as we lit a few candles and played a board game on the living room floor, I whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. Not for the pain, but for the strength it gave me. For the clarity. For the chance to start over, wiser, braver, and freer than ever before. It was one of those quiet nights, long after the kids had gone to sleep, when memories began creeping in like ghosts at the edge of the light. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, a photo album spread across my lap. The pictures, baby showers, birthday parties, holidays, were filled with fake smiles. Back then, I didn't see it. But now? Now I saw it all clearly. My parents had always been cold, more concerned with appearances than affection. When I got pregnant young, they didn't offer comfort, they offered shame. My mother called it a mistake, and my father barely looked at me. But I still tried. I still brought my children to their doorstep every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, hoping they'd someday soften. I remembered the day I bought this house. I was so proud, even though it was a fixer-upper. I'd saved every penny, worked 2 jobs, and skipped vacations. I invited my parents over to show them, thinking they'd say they were proud of me. But my father stood in the doorway and said, "So, this is it?" I smiled then, trying to push down the sting. I kept doing that, burying the hurt, giving them the benefit of the doubt, trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But it was after the accident when the mask truly fell. Lying in that hospital bed, barely able to move, I had clung to one thought: at least my parents will be there for the kids. That illusion kept me sane. So when I called and heard those heartless words, "We thought you had died, so we sold your house and put your children in an orphan home," something inside me shattered. Not just the trust. Not just the love. It was the illusion that I ever had a family to count on. That pain turned into fire. And that fire became strength. I stopped trying to be accepted. I stopped trying to prove my worth. That's when everything changed. Reclaiming my house wasn't just about bricks and furniture, it was me reclaiming myself. It was about choosing my children, my peace, and walking away from the toxic cycle of begging for love. I was no longer the girl who needed her parents' approval. I had become the woman who chose her own damn dignity. And that realization? It was the real revenge. Because nothing scares selfish people more than the person they once controlled walking away without looking back. It was a crisp Sunday morning, a few weeks after we had fully settled back into the house. The kids were outside, racing their bikes down the driveway, their laughter echoing like music across the neighborhood. I sat by the window, watching them through the sheer curtains, a soft smile on my face and a warm cup of coffee in my hands. This house, once a symbol of betrayal, now pulsed with life again, our life. Suddenly, a knock echoed at the front door. I opened it to find a man in a suit, real estate agent badge clipped to his collar. "Hi, ma'am. I was looking for Mr. and Mrs. Parker. They listed this home for sale, and..." I held up my hand gently, already anticipating the misunderstanding. "They no longer live here. The property now belongs to me, permanently." He blinked. "Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay," I smiled. A lot of people thought they had the right to this house. Turns out, what's built on lies can't hold up for long. As he walked away, I noticed something else across the street, a familiar figure slowly approaching. My mother. She looked older than I remembered. Her steps hesitant, eyes downcast. I opened the door again and waited. "I just wanted to see the kids," she whispered, voice shaking. "I know I don't deserve it, but I thought maybe." I didn't answer immediately. I looked at her, not with hate, but with clarity. "They cried every night in that orphan home," I said. "You left them when they needed you most. There are some things that can't be undone with a visit." Her eyes glistened, but I didn't move. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vengeful anymore. I was just done. "Tell Dad I hope he finds peace too," I added. "But not here. This home has healed too much to reopen old wounds." She gave a tiny nod and turned to leave. As she disappeared down the sidewalk, I closed the door, not with anger, but with resolution. I turned back to my kids, who waved at me from the yard. And in that moment, I understood something powerful. Revenge didn't mean screaming or slamming doors. It meant rebuilding what they tried to destroy, and making it stronger than ever. This wasn't just my victory. It was my rebirth. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is the life they said you'd never have.